So yeah, thanks everyone for joining today's webinar, where we'll be exploring if Volunteer Impact is the right software for your volunteer organisation. So just a little introduction from your co-hosts today, in which I'm also accompanied by the lovely Lindsay Marston of Chester Zoo, and you'll find out a little bit more about Lindsay's journey shortly afterwards. But just to begin, I'm Daniel Green. I'm the software sales advisor for Better Impact, supporting small to enterprise-sized organisations across UK, Europe and Africa, all exploring our software solutions. Some of you can probably tell from my accent already that I am born and raised in Essex, UK. Spent most of my career in sales. I really just have a passion for helping and supporting people, just achieving their goals, basically. So I'll keep it short and sweet for me, but I'll pass over to you, Lindsay, if you want to do a quick intro. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Morning, everyone. So I'm Lindsay Marston. I'm the volunteer manager at Chester Zoo. At Chester Zoo, I've got a small team of staff and quite a large team of volunteers. And what we really do is support the conservation, education and engagement activities in the zoo and in the local community. We've got volunteers in a wide range of roles. So this includes education, hands-on conservation activities such as gardening or working with the animals or in the local community. We have volunteers involved with youth volunteering, Duke of Edinburgh, citizen science activities as well. Myself, I'm experienced volunteer management professional. I have been at Chester Zoo for almost 6 years. Before then, I worked for the NSPCC with the Childline Service, so I managed volunteers there for the helpline. So I'm quite experienced in using volunteer management software to engage volunteers. And also I am chair of the British and Irish Association for Zoos and Aquariums. I lead a volunteer managers working group which supports other volunteer managers and zoos and aquariums across the UK to engage volunteers successfully as well. And we provide support to each other as well. So that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lindsay, for that. And again, you'll hear more from Lindsay shortly afterwards, and she'll share her experience with her journey on choosing a VMS. So here's just a quick list of some takeaways that you'll be gaining from today's webinar. These are common problems facing volunteer service teams. We'll have a quick program assessment combined with 3 questions. Why the right software tools matter. As I just mentioned, we'll also share Lindsay's journey and tips to successfully finding software. I'll also be conducting a high-level overview of volunteer impact and a few resources and a link to obtain your PDU certificate for attending today. So stick around towards the end and I'll share that link for you to obtain your PDU certificate. If you're not too sure what a PDU is, it stands for Professional Development Unit, which also sometimes referred to as a CEC, which is a continued education credit. So yep, stick around, I'll share that at the end for everyone. So the problem versus the solution. So just some of the common problems faced by many organisations and volunteer programs, which could include too much data entry, using disconnected tools to do your job. Maybe there's not enough time to lead and engage your volunteers, or maybe it's finding affordable tools that leadership will approve, or it could be insufficient security of your confidential volunteer data. So, well, hopefully we have the answer, being that Volunteer Impact is a top-rated solution that many organisations utilise to overcome these challenges. So, protecting your volunteers' data. So how can you tell if a VMS vendor prioritises data protection? So one easy way to tell is to look for the ISO certification. So ISO 27001 is the world's best known standard for information security management systems. So ISO certification means that the VMS vendor respects all them best practices and principles enshrined in this international standard. So having the actual certificate, rather than simply following the guidelines, is an important distinction because it means the vendor has been audited by the independent body once a year to make sure these standards are being met. So you'll be pleased to know that Better Impact are one of these vendors with the ISO 27001. And it's also good to know that we are also Cyber Essentials certified as well. So that's just great to have for peace of mind as well, more than anything. So just going to go through a couple of questions now. Feel free to, let me just, someone else is joining. Feel free to pop your answers in the chat box. It could be that you may have more than one answer. Feel free to put them in if it is more. So question 1, which problem resonated with you the most from the last slide? So number 1, too much data entry. Number 2, using too many disconnected tools to do your job. 3, not enough time to lead and engage with your volunteers. Could it be number 4, affordable tools leadership will approve? Or number 5, insufficient security of your confidential volunteer data. So I'll give you 30 odd seconds or so just to pop in your answers. I'll share some of these answers out as well, see what we come back with. So Tony has put 2 and 4. Yep, that sounds about right. Lisa from Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary, all of these are a problem for us. Yep, it could be all of them, could be one of them. We've got 1 and 2. Sue's put 2, 3 and 4. And Natasha is that for 1, 2, 3, 4. And Lindsay Hughes, number 2. All right, so I think the outright winner there, I mean, they're all listed, but it does seem to be number 2, seems to be the forefront there, using too many disconnected tools to do your job. And I've had from previous webinars that, yeah, number 1 and 2 seem to be the top, the front runners there. Brilliant, thanks everyone. All right, on to question 2. How are you managing your volunteers currently? Again, just pop your answers in the chat box. Number 1 for spreadsheets. Number 2, a VMS, which is a volunteer management software. Or number 3, something else. If it is number 2 or 3, feel free to put in what you are currently using as well. If you want to, just for feedback, that'd be great. Martin, 2 and 4. I think I'm reading from the original one. Bear with me. There we go. So number 1, 1 and 3. Lindsay Hughes, 1 and 2. Blackboard and Razor's Edge. Tony's put 1 and 3. Microsoft Package. And Sue Jenkins from everyone, Excel and Charity CRM. I mean, yeah, when it comes to spreadsheets, obviously Excel, Microsoft, Google Forms as well seem to be, and there are so many organizations out there that are still using these let's say free spreadsheets that they can get, which is fine if it does your job, but sometimes you've got to think, what's it costing you in not having all these functions and features that VMSs offer as well. And Aubrey's put number 3, Google. Excellent. Thanks again, everyone. Question 3. So in your opinion, what's most at risk if a change doesn't occur sooner rather than later? Is it number 1, volunteer turnover, disengagement? Number 2, staff turnover, disengagement? Is it number 3, wasted money? Number 4, damage to organisations, programmes, reputation? Or is it something else at number 5? Natasha put 1 and 3, volunteer turnover and wasted money. Tony's put number 4, damage to organisations, programme and organisation. And Lisa has put 1, 3 and 4. Yep. Martin Purcell from everyone, 4, but most are at risk. Well, most are a risk. And Kira Mills from everyone as well, number 1, limited staff capacity. 1, 3 and 4. So yeah, it does seem number 1, most of people have put there. free, wasted money, absolutely. Everyone works on a budget, particularly in this non-profit sector, so it's good to get to know that you know you're utilising what your organisation is paying for as well. So brilliant, thanks everyone for that. So why having the right tools for the job matter? So more than half of all employees are unhappy at work because of the software tools they're using. So yeah, 51.95% says yes. Have you ever become dissatisfied at work due to missing or mismatched software? And just to let you know, these stats have come from G2's 2019 State of Software Happiness Report. This is quite an alarming stat, actually. So about 1 in every 8 employees have actually quit a job because of mismatched software. So let's get you working with the tools that make you feel less frustrated and rather more empowered and productive when you do your job. I'm now going to pass you over to Lindsay, who achieved just that. So there we go. As I mentioned, Lindsay, feel free to, you know, if you go off, just let me know and I'll go to the next slide. That'd be great. Thank you. Over to you.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you. I was a bit alarmed around those statistics around staff leaving because of mismatched software. That's really something definitely to highlight. That's really sad. But yes, we've been using Better Impact since 2017. Before then, we didn't use anything, any other software for volunteer engagement. I wasn't at the zoo in 2017, but they used to use Excel forms. When I first started, we did a bit of a data cleanse and I went through all these forms that they had of just all the information around volunteers, like all their personal sort of information, all the hours they did, the training they did. And I just looked at it and thought, my goodness, there's a lot of work has gone into that. And they did spend a lot of their time just entering data all the time. They use Word quite a lot. Some of the volunteers would apply using paper application forms. They rely on email for lots of the communication with volunteers, so lots of back and to, especially at Chester Zoo, is such a dynamic organisation. There's so much information that volunteers need to know or need to come back into our team. So a lot of that was sort of being managed on either a sort of verbal basis, an email basis, or by text. So lots of different ways, lots of information flying around. And yeah, they spend a lot of their time doing just that. To flip forward then.
Sure.
So I think, sorry, the challenges that they really faced was the heavy administration. So very quickly they took on another officer to support the engagement of volunteers because the person they had existing just couldn't manage all of the volunteer data and all the volunteering activity. In terms of storage, they just stored it on with the traditional files areas. With a system like Better Impact, you have a login for every staff member. So they have their email address, a password. You know, it's a really secure way of having that data behind a firewall, and you can sort of customize who sees what. But when it was just on the system, it was, you know, it was just there on the system. Yes, you can use passwords to protect files, but it really just wasn't as secure as, say, a sort of volunteer management system. And yeah, definitely a time drain for the team. Very clunky reporting, just wasn't accurate. I look back on reporting from years ago for when we engaged volunteers, and we just cannot compare it to what we have now. So it's very difficult to sort of show growth and changes in development over time, because a lot of it is not always the most accurate data. So we can only really say about how many volunteers we've grown, and you know, it's really hard to sort of measure other things. Like, for example, now we measure every single engagement volunteers have with visitors, so we can demonstrate one of the ways that volunteers really make an impact to the work we do at Chester Zoo. So yeah, it was really difficult to carry out that reporting. I think the saddest thing really was it was all one way. So volunteers didn't have any control really over their volunteer experience. They couldn't choose to just sign up to a different opportunity on a whim, they'd always have to go back to the team to sign up to things. So again, it's either emailing or calling up rather than just being able to click on, see an opportunity and sign up. So yeah, it was very clunky. Volunteers didn't have that control, and it was just a lot for staff to manage, really. Do you want to flip forward then, Neil? So yeah, do you want to say a little bit about this?
I was just going to let you know that these challenges are just the hours on your previous system before Better Impact. But yeah, far away, Lindsay.
Yeah, so Daniel really helped us to look at this, really, actually where was that time actually going, and actually just doing this task. So the person who was in post previously is still in our organisation. So, you know, I was able to have a bit of a chat with them about how they used to spend a lot of their time, and, you know, you can just see how much of an absolute time drain it was, and how best that time the volunteer managers could have spent doing the things that we do now with volunteers to engage them better. But yeah, they just spent just so much time just in the scheduling, in the exporting information, into getting volunteers where they should be. So yeah, an absolute time drain for the team there. Absolutely every process was manual. There was no automation to anything, really. Trying to flip forward, and Daniel. So the reason we actually went from using like Excel and things like that to using a system like Better Impact is because in 2015 we really grew the volunteer offer. So at Chester Zoo we built a whole new area called Islands, and when we introduced Islands, we introduced many more volunteers over a sort of 2-year period, and it just really increased the number of volunteers, the number of roles, the number of activities, and also there was a real sort of demand to actually demonstrate the impact of those volunteers and really understand a bit more about what it was exactly they're doing with visitors. So this is when they started that journey to search for a volunteer management system. As we engage with more volunteers, the need for, you know, there was just more admin came out of that. So the way that they started to explore looking for a new software, so they sort of looked out into the sector, you know, what else is available. So one thing they did is we have a great connection with other volunteer managers, you know, across the UK, just really looking at what is it that other volunteer managers are using. Better Impact was something that was recommended. So the team, they booked a demonstration with Better Impact at the time to really see what it was all about. Once they were sort of really happy with the system, and I know they looked at other things as well, so it wasn't that they just looked at the one system, they did look at other things. They felt happy with Better Impact. They thought that it would sort of serve the needs. So I think one thing they really wanted to understand as well was from volunteers is what it is that they need as well. And volunteers were saying that they wanted a lot more autonomy over their experience. So that was one of the factors in them choosing a system like Better Impact, where you can sort of really tailor the volunteer management experience. We did have a lot of support from the head of department and IT as well. So, you know, the IT team are used to looking at different softwares for different activities that we have in the zoo. And they were able to have a look to see if it would actually suit the needs of the zoo and if it was secure enough as a system to introduce. And I know that they then put a business case together to sort of demonstrate why a system like this would be beneficial, what that sort of return on investment would be in terms of staff time, what else we could do, and why it would sort of really elevate the volunteer experience there as well. Do you want to flip forward, Dan? So the real things that stood out for Better Impact was how affordable it was. So it is a really affordable system. So it suited the budget that we had, but also how easy it was to use. So our volunteers start from the age of 14. We've got volunteers right into their 80s. We've got volunteers with a range of different learning and development needs as well. So we needed something that was easy for staff to use, but also easy for volunteers to use on their side as well. Better Impact has an app that volunteers can use on their phones. They can manage the whole experience from their phone then. We also installed these an iPad in the zoo as well, so we could support volunteers from that side as well. So when they're logging in on the iPad, we could teach them how to use it and how to make the most out of that system as well. It has such a multi-range of things that make it such an attractive system. So as a start, it really holds all that information about volunteers, so who they are, their next of kin, their addresses. We use the qualifications area as well to highlight which role they do, if they've got DBS checks, what training they've had. And once you match that qualification with an opportunity, they only see the opportunities that are available to them. So instead of them seeing this massive activities going on in the zoo, they can see the things that they'd either been trained for or they had the right checks for in terms of safer recruitment checks. So it made scheduling people so much easier. They can apply straight through the system as well. So we get quite a lot of people that are interested in volunteering with us at Chester Zoo, and the paper admin side of that and just kind of applying through email was just too time consuming. To be able to sort of do that onboarding process just from one system and have that overview there, and having people in the different stages of application in progress to a fully fledged volunteer is just a really simple way of managing volunteers and engaging with them well. What we really love about it though is it's got its own e-learning area for volunteers. You can tailor the e-learning for anything you want. You can embed videos, you can put lots of different content in them. There's a files area as well. So if you need to match a policy to a training, you can do that so easily. So for example, we've just made a new security training module and a health and safety one. So we've got these new videos that are embedded into the training modules. We've got the information that volunteers need, and then there's a policy sign-off area. So we're not having to, because in the past you'd have to read a physical policy, sign a physical form, and we'd be checking this all the time. Now we can see that they've done it. We can run a quick report, and we can see where the gaps are. It's just so much easier. One thing that my team absolutely love and we all kind of really geek out about is the badges. You can tailor badges for everything on there. So we've got them for like years of service. We use them for training as well. We use them for the qualifications they have, so the different roles. So if you're a volunteer that has kind of a real broad volunteer experience, you might be an education volunteer, you might be greenhouse and gardening, you might have done thousands of hours of volunteering. You've got all these badges there that kind of show you experience. So from their side, they've got this like gorgeous illustration of the not just the time they give, but the contribution and skills that they're giving and gaining through volunteering. So that's one of my favourite features, is the badges. So yeah, definitely won't apologise for that. I absolutely love them, and we've tailored them to just look absolutely magic on the system. It's a really secure way of contacting volunteers. So we get really nervous at the zoo about using BCC and CC. We get so nervous that we're going to have a big data breach, that a system like this is really good because you can just email them straight from the system. There's no risk of you accidentally sending an email to everyone and everyone else's email addresses are attached to it, because you can run the right reports for who you need to contact. It just goes straight to them. It doesn't show any other information. So it is really secure. We manage the volunteers from Better Impact, and we have all these full admin rights, but we also have other administrators that do different tasks and look after volunteers who don't need to see everything. So you can really tailor what people are seeing. So, for example, we've got these zoo rangers that just manage volunteers that volunteer in our memory cafe, which is a dementia-friendly cafe. And all they need to see is who's volunteering and when. They don't need to see next of kin information. They don't need to see addresses. And for those administrators, you can just tailor that experience. So they've just got the right information that's right for them. So if you're sort of someone that's got a bit of a complex operation, it's more than just you having to access volunteer information. It is really, really good for stuff like that. So my top impact features, I think I've said, creating those opportunities for volunteers to sign up for. You can make them super attractive as well. So you can have a great catchy title. You can embed pictures, maps, whatever it is you need to fully describe what it is volunteers are doing, where you're meeting them when. everything. You can put that into the opportunity. Badges, I think I've shouted about badges enough. I think they're ace. And then feedback fields. So I think I said to you earlier that we used to get just tons of emails about, or verbal feedback about, oh, this is broken in the zoo, or why is you know, does this animal have a prehensile tail, or why does this animal sleep at night time, or all these like millions of questions we get from volunteers and visitors. And I don't know the answer to these things. I'm a volunteer manager, but I know people that do. But when these questions come in verbally, I'm a bit, but we use the feedback fields at the end of every engagement with volunteers for them to put those questions in. And at the end of the week, we can run a quick report, pull off all those questions and send them to the zoo rangers and the animal teams. They can answer all these obscure questions about animals that I don't know about. And then we can get those answers back to volunteers the week after in our weekly comms. So it's such a great way of just cutting down those sort of those little interactions that you don't need to have in that moment. You could use that time to best spend with volunteers in different ways as well. So I really love the feedback fields, are just so useful. Let's skip ahead, Daniel. I think that might be one of my last ones, maybe.
Yeah,
There might be one more.
That's it. I
Yes,
mean,
yeah.
you can carry on with this, Lindsay, if you want. This is just obviously the results now. Lindsay, you know, has made that transition from the previous software, and the results now from using Better Impact. If you want to mention something that, Lindsay, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think for us, it's just enabled us to really elevate what we're doing. So we went from having visitor engagement volunteers, education volunteers, and youth volunteers. Now we've got such a complex operation of volunteers doing a range of different roles in the zoo and also in the local community. We can really just put volunteers where they need to be when they need to be there, and it puts it in their hands as well. One thing that's really good for us as well, so as you know, we're a visitor attraction. We have 2 million visitors every year. We're really conscious and really mindful about security on site. One thing that Better Impact has as a feature is clock in, clock out. So at the start of a shift, a volunteer can start their clock and then stop it at the end. So at any moment, I can look on that clocking system and see I've got 5 over on islands, I've got 2 in the greenhouses, I've got 6 out in the community. I know exactly where everybody is and when. So should there be an incident, I know where they are. And it's so important to us as a visitor attraction that we have those safety measures. And I think Better Impact really allows us to do that really well as well. And if a volunteer comes in and they were on islands, but they're going to be in the Jaguar house, I can just change it really quickly and it shows up on there. It's just so easy to do at the click of a button there. I've got a question in the chat box, actually. Are we doing questions at the end, or is it okay to do them now, Daniel?
I mean, I'll carry on. Feel free if you want to pop back the answer in the chat box.
Oh,
Lindsay,
yeah, okay.
it's up to you. Yeah, and I'll carry on. Or if you want to, if you have got any questions for Lindsay, everyone, you can put it in the chat box for Lindsay to answer back, or you can hold off until the end where we'll hold a Q&A session. But yeah, feel free if you want to reply. And
no, I think that's all from me. Just love the system. So thanks, Daniel.
Excellent. No, thanks, Lindsay, for sharing your story. And now I will continue with a high-level overview of volunteer impact. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Excellent. So as we mentioned, this is going to be a high-level overview of volunteer impact. So I could go on for ages and scream shout about all the lovely features, some of them that Lindsay mentioned as well. But we're just going to focus on the main key features and functions of the software. So what you see here, or what you're presented with, is the volunteer dashboard. So when you log in as an administrator, this is the screen you're presented with. So on your dashboard, as you can see, and I think Lindsay mentioned these previously as well, that this is a VMS that runs from end to end to manage your volunteers, right from the start off to the end of their journey. And throughout their journey, they will be placed into these, what we call statuses. There's 5 statuses throughout your volunteer's journey. And I'll just quickly go through these. So the applicant. So the first of all is, yes, you will be able to onboard and recruit via the software. When people apply, They will land in your account automatically as an applicant, and they will sit there until you determine where they go next, depending on your screening process. The next one along is the in-process status. So these are all your volunteers that are currently under review. So it could be that you're just waiting to approve a qualification or a custom field, but they will sit there until they are a fully pledged accepted volunteer. And it's good that there is a separate category from applicants, so it just makes that more manageable in your screening process. The next one along is all your accepted and active volunteers. You then have the inactive status. So this status represents, or I call this the leave of absence status. So these are all volunteers that are just, they could be just taking a long break from volunteering. They could be on medical, maternity leave, just a holiday, for example. But at some point, they will be returning back to your program, and you can dictate whether they are going to be short-term or long-term. And then towards the end of the volunteer's journey, we've got the archived status. So these represent all your volunteers that maybe moved on, resigned, dismissed, or even rejected at the start. And as you can see, you've got some options there to choose on where they fall into the archived category. Just to let you know, for billing purposes as well, we do only invoice you for accepted and inactive volunteers. So just bear that in mind. We don't invoice you if you was to subscribe to Better Impact, to any of the first two, or the archived as well. But what's really cool is you do get some system alerts on the software as well. So just underneath the statuses box here, you can see the system will flag up when you've got some custom fields that need to be approved or even rejected. These could be things like references and also qualifications as well. So when a qualification comes in, depending on your permissions, and I'll mention this a little bit later on with custom fields and qualifications, that you can approve or reject them as well. This is really cool for auditing purposes, but with qualifications, you can add expiry dates to these as well. The system will pick up when they are due to expire. It will flag up here on your dashboard, and that will just prompt you as an administrator just to reach out to that particular volunteer to get them to renew that qualification if they haven't done so already. So hopefully they don't fall into this category of expired qualifications, which then may not make them eligible now for the role they're contributing towards as well. We've got hours approvals, and something that Lindsay mentioned as well, volunteers on the clock. That's, with use of our time clock kiosk as well. It's a really cool feature, and pending sign-ups. I'll come back to that as well. These are pin searches. So again, I will come back to this when we go over a search for a volunteer and communicating. But I'm actually going to start off with the recruitment on the onboarding. So as I mentioned, it's an end-to-end VMS. And to start off, you want to advertise your activities, news feeds, and get volunteers to apply. So this is what we call a public page. It's your advertising page. This will be branded by your organisation as well. So I'm using, this is obviously my demo account. So I'm using example City Museum. You can display a news feed. You can also display all your current general interests, which are more like want ads, which are a lot more like the areas or the fields of interest that the volunteers are interested in. So this could be things like gardening, special events, services, administration, for example. And as Lindsay rightly mentioned as well, general interests or activities, you can display as much info and add images to these as well. You can also advertise your actual activities as well. You can choose to make them public on here. And then just back up to the top here, you've also got a social media feed as well, which is backed up by, or X, formerly known as Twitter and Facebook. So there's a social media feed as well. And as a volunteer or an applicant, if I want to apply, I'm just going to click here, and this will take me to the application form. So let me just log in. So first of all, actually, I'll stay on this page. So when I go to apply, so firstly, you will be able to hyperlink that public page and add that to your website as well. Once I go to apply, there's like 2 steps I have to go through to apply as an applicant. So the first one is I just need to register with, it's what we call the My Impact Page account. So that is the volunteer login portal. That allows the volunteer, if they've got their own profile, they'll be able to update their personal contact information. This all does feedback into, bear with me, back into the administration portal. There we go. If I click on fill in application, so this is what I was mentioning, sorry. So you'll be presented with this page. Again, this is branded by your organisation. Now, that's my impact page, which I need to create. So just like most things online, if I'm new and I haven't got a My Impact Page account, I'll just register online, create a username and a password, and then I'll go through to fill out your application form. So on this page as well, when I do create my impact page, and I will show you what this looks like from the user's perspective as well. So yep, I'll be able to update my personal information. I'll be able to sign myself up for any activities that the administration would have created. I can see this in a list or a calendar format, and I'll be able to log my hours and in feedback fields that Lindsay mentioned earlier on as well. You can also add a volunteers policies box here as well. So if you do want any of your applicants to read any policies before going through to fill out the application form, you can do so here. And if I've already got an account, which I have, once I've filled that in, it's going to take me to the application form. You can also add things like this, checkboxes to say your applicants have read any like terms and conditions. So once I've created the step 1, created my impact page account, I'm then on to step 2, which is the actual application form. So again, this is all customized with your own branding. This is what we call banner. Even right down to the color of the tabs, you'll be able to, you know, customize the theme and the contents and the colors. So on here, you can have this as well. This is the general availability chart. By all means, you can create your own one. We have got this here by default if you'd like to use that. So volunteers or applicants can pick and choose their availability. They will be able to check any boxes to see what general interests or them fields they're interested in. These are our qualifications that we've obviously made up in this demo account. So they just put in their qualifications. We've got this in drop-down menus as well. And as you can see, some there you can add expiry dates. So the additional info is what we call the custom fields. So custom fields, I like to call your customized data collecting questions. So create as many as you like. You've got unlimited custom fields to use at your disposal. Custom fields, as an example, could be things like references, emergency contact information, what languages can you speak, for example. You can manipulate what type of answers you want with a custom field. So we've got things like short text and long text boxes. You've got drop-down menus. You've got date fields, there's number fields, we've got check boxes, and there's also a file upload as well. So if you want to gather like a resume, a CV, or a driver's license upon application, choose a file that will give the applicant the opportunity to download a file. And you can also categorize these as well. So there we go. We've got all these into a category. There we go. We've got references and emergency contact information. And when I submit that, I'm going to land in your Better Impacts account automatically into the applicant status. And as I mentioned, it's from there that you determine where they go next, depending on your screening process. So for now, I'm going to focus on these main icons at the top. Before I do that, I just want to show you what the volunteer profile looks like as well. I think this may have logged me out when I go back on here, so give me 1 second. When you want to look up your volunteers, individual volunteers and their profiles, you're going to use this search bar on the top right. So just click on this person icon here. I'm going to use Veronica. She's my demo volunteer. As soon as you start typing the name, the system does start to match that, so you haven't got to put in the full name all the time. And I'm going to click on here. So all that information that Veronica would have filled in on the application form will all be stored on this volunteer profile. And here we are. So this is Veronica Smith. We're just going to quickly go through some of these tabs, but this is a quick snapshot on her main page. As you can see, you or the volunteer can upload a profile picture. You can see a quick snapshot of contact information, history, next shift, and most recent contributions. There's also a bar graph just showing you Veronica's contributions over the months. and you can see the hours we're in each month if you hover over them. There's also a pie chart, which is showing you where all of Veronica's hours have gone towards which activities. And there we go. One of Lindsay's favourites is the badges. So there we go. So you can create badges for signs of recognition and awards, things like milestones, as Lindsay mentioned, for, anniversaries, hours contributed, qualifications, and also feedback fields as well. You can create, we have got templates you can use. However, you can also download if you do have your own images as well. And these will all be associated with each volunteer profile. So we'll just quickly go across some of these tabs here. So communication, I can communicate with and this is just Veronica. I can send Veronica an email. I can add images, attachments, links into these emails. I can send her a text message as well. I'll go more into communication shortly afterwards. You can send a personal message to Veronica. So if you just want to say thank you to Veronica for helping out lastminute.com on an activity, you can put it in here, and this will be displayed on Veronica's homepage when she logs in to her volunteer profile. There's an email history as well. So it does log all outgoing emails that were sent by the administrator, along with the text message history. And there's also a note log as well for each volunteer. So you could put anything you need, any notes towards this volunteer, where it's dietary requirements, some information. This is only visible to admins. The volunteer themselves will not see these notes. If I go across again to the tabs at the top, so even though volunteers will have the ability to sign up for their own activities in a list or a calendar format, you can do pretty much everything on the volunteer's behalf. You can just go to their profile, you can assign them up to activities, you can check out their schedule, you can even log their hours, feedback on their behalf as well. So on here, this is if I do want to assign Veronica to any of the activities. Obviously, these are the ones we created. This is based upon a museum, this demo account. I can see Veronica's schedule. I can also see this in a calendar format as well. So if I go down to the bottom, click on view reports, there we go. So this is all of Veronica's upcoming shifts that she's got within the calendar month. I can also download this, print it off, or even email it to Veronica if she wants something, tangible by hand to put on her fridge, for example. This is where I can see all of Veronica's hours. I can just do some reports quickly on Veronica. This could be an hours report. You can report over any date period. We've also got this feature called committees as well, which is a great feature for volunteers to communicate within a group to each other, only by email. So obviously with the volunteers' consent, you can add them to committees and they will be able to email each other within that committee group as well. If I go back to the main, I'll go to these sub tabs underneath. This is where I can see all of Veronica's contact information. I can see all of Veronica's custom fields. So these are all her answers embedded in here to her custom fields. Now, again, with custom fields, you will be able to set permissions on these like private, read only, read write without, or with approval as well. So obviously, if you've got any kind of sensitive EDI information, for example, create it as a custom field, set it private, so only the administrator will be able to see that, and that'll be visible here on the volunteer profile. I can see all of Veronica's qualifications. Her general interests, her general availability, so she's checked boxes when she's available, and we've also got this miscellaneous tab here. On here, you'll be able to see, obviously, when she joined. You'll also be able to see things like status, and if Veronica has let you know that she's taking a break from volunteering and you want to change her status to inactive, you can do so from here as well. Okay, I'm going to quickly move on to these main icons at the top here. So to begin with, when you do have a brand new account, whether you're trialing or you subscribed, you want to start to configure your platform. So to do that, you probably want to start off with this cog icon, the configuration icon. any of these main icons at the top do bring down all these subcategories here on the left-hand side. So within this one, on the configuration icon, you'll be able to set your branding. As I've mentioned, you'll be able to brand not only the application forms, but the public page and also the My Impact page as well. You'll be able to, and this is where you do add your custom fields, your qualifications. So you want to obviously create all these first before you do create an application form. And there we go. So these are our list of custom fields. As I said, put them into categories with all the different types of answers and the permissions. And then you've got your qualifications as well. You've got your badges that we've been through, committees. You've got, this is where you'll create your public page, and you've got some public page settings as well. Your activities. So this is where you will create your activities. So if I click on manage activities, this is what we created. Just like the custom fields, you will be able to put your activities into categories as well. And you'll be able to, when you create activities, you can give them all sorts of timing patterns, whether it's recurring, which is most common, commonly selected, where you'll be able to set all the different shifts for this activity, give it a start and an end date, a minimum and maximum amounts of volunteers. You'll be able to manipulate who sees these activities. Do you want it made public? Do you want it for only visible to volunteers who are signed up or on the backup list, or only people who are accepted as the status and are qualified? So if you are creating an activity and it needs a DBS background check, for example, if I haven't got that qualification, I won't be able to see it when I log into My Impacts page for me to sign up for. So you'll be able to do that all on here as well. So let's go back to these main icons here. So we've got this people icon. First of all, click on here. And again, this is all the subcategories on the left-hand side. From here, you will be able to add volunteers manually yourself if needs be. You can add administrators. We don't charge for administrators. You've got unlimited administrators, so add as many as you like. You can give them full or limited access as well. But this is a great way if you do want to do a quick search on a group of people, for example, as well. I'll show you a quick example. So let me just, under the people search here, I'm just going to click on the search tab. And I'm kind of presented with this filtering page. So I'm just going to do a quick demonstration of just a list of all the accepted volunteers. So there we go. If you want to break down and add a granular for search filter, you can press here. If you want to search or group a bunch of volunteers that have a particular qualification, you can do that. And I'm going to show a similar example to that on the communications tab. But for now, we're just choosing accepted, press search, and there we go. So systems found 225 volunteers, all accepted in the program. If you want to save that search, you can do so. Just press save, put on here, you know, accepted volunteers. And if you pin that search, it will check it there where it says pin search and save. Basically what you've done, you've created a shortcut to your dashboard for them searches, which are all here. There's just some examples that I've created, applicants for special events. Like I said, you can filter down on anything, volunteers with driving license, weekend availability. And I'm going to show you another example of that when we go over to the communications tab next. So on here we go, the megaphone icon, click on communicate and on the subcategories here. So just to let you know, you've got three main methods of communication within the software. That's email, text, and you can do a mail out. You could do that in mass if you do things like monthly newsletters. You could do it in filtered groups if you just want to reach out, like I said, to a certain group with a qualification, you can do so, or just to individuals. As I mentioned, you can do that from the profile. Just two things to note on the text messaging. It is a one-way communication only, so you can send texts to volunteers, but they won't be able to reply. And secondly, all volunteers will have the option, if they're doing an opt-in, to receive the SMS service as well. I'm going to quickly show you how to send an email. So all we need to do over the email section, send email. It's taking me back to this similar looking page that we was on before on the people search. So again, I'm just going to check the box accepted, but this time I'm going to add a search criteria. So click on here. You're then presented with this drop-down menu, and look, this is everything you can search for. Okay, so I'm actually going to do a qualification. So I'm going to reach out to everyone that has a driver's license. So when you click on qualifications, another drop down menu, these would all be your qualifications that you would have created within the software. So I'm looking for, there we go. Do you have a driver's license? Is equal to yes. And go. And there we go. 32 people were found. Okay. And here we go. This is where you can, you'll add your email, obviously, the body of the email. You'll be able to, I think Lindsay picked up on this, you will be able to add images and links and attachments to these. What's really cool as well, that you will be able to save email templates as well. So this does save a lot of time for the administrators as well, if it's a similar email that you're always sending out. So let's, you know, if you do a mass email, you've got things like monthly newsletters. I'll just show you what that one looks like. You could put a first name and last name placeholder as well. So when the recipient receives that email, it's a bit more personal. So say like, hi Mary, hi Veronica, hi Daniel, hi John, for example. Once you're ready, send an email, and that's going to go out to them 32 people that have the driver's license. And again, you can repeat the process if you want to save this search. If this is a group of people you generally communicate with, save it, pin it to your dashboard. And that's unique for every administrator as well. So, you know, if you've got other administrators using the software, they will have different pin searches on their dashboard. Just speeding things along now, because I know we're almost out of time. Assigning, you will be able to assign volunteers in bulk, individually. You can go over here on the left-hand side once clicking on the assign tab and see these like from a calendar, for example. So it's good to keep on top of things and seeing what activities may need some attention and focus. So here we can see over a calendar format, there's a lot of red and blue. Okay, so the red represents that these activities are still vacant on the day, through to the blue, which means the minimum amount of volunteers has been matched and confirmed. You haven't really got to worry about that. If I click on the 5th, that looks quite red. You can hover over the day, click on the day, and there we go. It brings up all them activities on that day. Now, we've got quite a lot going on in this demo account. It could be that you just may have one or two, but this is where you can see how to get along. Now, obviously, here we go. All these red ones, they need attention. So let's say guest services driver. Click on that. And again, you'll be able to create your own kind of search field on what you want to find to assign volunteers to these activities. So I've just got here already. You can save these by default as well, your searches. Must be qualified and accepted with no overlapping assignments. Press search. And there's the volunteers underneath that are all accepted and available, no overlapping assignments. You can choose them all and assign them in bulk or just individually. Okay. And that just goes on to reporting. So you'll be able to report on pretty much anything and everything as long as you have that data tracked and recorded. Again, on the left-hand side, I'll show you an example of a couple of reports. So we've got hours by volunteer. Click on the hours by volunteer. As I mentioned previously, you will be able to report over any date period. We're only on February, so I'm going to do last year. View report, and there we go. So it's brought up all the volunteers' hours with the volunteer with the most hours at the top, right through to the volunteer at the bottom of the least, and it does give you at the bottom total hours, average number of volunteers, and average per volunteer as well. Okay. You'll all be able to, within this reporting section, be able to export these reports to CSV and Excel as well. Just to show you another one, you've got all different types of reporting you can do, whether it's chart formats, bar graphs. I'm just going to keep it on date there. There we go. So this is hours trend, number of hours by month, number of hours, number of volunteers with logged hours by month and average per volunteer. One particular reporting function I love is the personal profile raw data reports. So you can pretty much pick and choose what you want to report on. If it's custom fields, you know, throw in some demographics. If you want to do some hours, mix up whatever kind of report you want to do, pull that report to CSV and Excel as well. I'm just going to quickly share my other screen and just show you the My Impact page. So let me log on here. Someone give me a thumbs up if they can see this okay. Thank you. Cheers, Lindsay. So what I'm logging in, so I'm now Veronica. So this is the My Impacts page, obviously the desktop version. I forgot to mention at the start that the My Impacts page is also app-based as well. So your volunteers will be able to download this for free on any Android or iPhone device and use it on the go. So I'm just going to, it's actually quite a lot of similar information we saw from the volunteer profile on the admin page. But again, there's Veronica's profile picture, there's her badges, you've got an image gallery. This is backed up by Flickr feed, so it's a bit old school, but it's still there on offer. The social media feed again, there's that personal message that I mentioned earlier on. If you just want to thank Veronica personally, you can do so. You've also got an alternative or another news feed that you can add on your My Impact page as well. So all volunteers, when they log in, will see this news feed. And this is, I think, someone Lindsay picked up on as well, as the feature that's called a document library. So you'll be able to, store any documents, whether they're volunteer handbooks, waiver forms, or policies. For admins to use. You can also share them with your volunteers to gain access to. If you do, then they'll be able to gain access to these files here in the bottom right. And just at the bottom here, you'll also have About Us, which is more like a mission statement. So back up to the top. Now, if I want to see an activity I'd like to sign up for, I can see this in a list or a calendar format. So I'm just going to choose the calendar. It's a little bit more easy than the eye for me. Click on here. And these are all the activity taking place this coming month. So all I need to do is click on one. There we go. Gives you all the information about that activity. And I can sign up there. That's how easy that is. If I go across, I can see my schedule. And again, this is kind of what we saw on Veronica's profile. So I see that in a list. I can see that in the calendar format as well. Now, this tab is where I can log my hours. So on here, let's say I've just come back from information booth attendant. So you obviously list of your activities will come up here. Choose that one, put in the date I volunteered, the hours I've contributed, just put 2 hours. And here's the feedback fields as well. So again, you'll be able to create the feedback fields from scratch within the configuration icon. And when you create an activity, you can add feedback fields to them activities as well. So for the information booth attendant, we've got any incidents to report. We've got a long text box there. And we've got some drop-down menus. So how did you feel about your volunteer experience? There we go. So this is just giving you an example, but you can put whatever you want or whatever you need to gather from that volunteer in terms of even things like a driving job. If you do want to just get a mileage, if that particular volunteer wants to claim back their mileage for expenses, for example. Once I put in my feedback, I'll be able to save that. And obviously all this information does feed back into the administration portal. Excellent. So we've got some reports, some contact information as well. And then my profile, this is where I can see all the information, my own custom fields, my qualifications. And I'm just going to show this before I go back to the webinar slide. This is the e-learning modules. So you will be able to create e-learning modules and your volunteers will be able to take them online from their My Impact page. I'll just show you what one of them could look like. This is our training hand hygiene module. So we created this when COVID came about, the 30-second hand rule. So you can add images, GIFs, videos, links, images as well. You can put in as much information as you like within this. And then you can set like some pre-populated questions with the answers as well. And there we go. Excellent. All right, let me go back to the slides. Excellent. So now that you've heard about Lindsay's story and a little bit about volunteer impact, I'll now share with you Better Impact's background. So our story, Better Impact, actually started by fluke. Our CEO, Tony's passion project of building a web-based volunteer management software solution for a residential hospice he founded, actually birthed the beginnings of a global We're Here to Help company. So we're just over 20 years old now and growing. We are a small company, but we do have a global impact. We have offices here in the UK, offices in Canada, USA, and Australia, but we do have customers, all over the globe. We specialise in volunteer management software, volunteer impacts, but we are also providers of donor, client, and member solutions that all integrate with volunteer impact. And lastly, we're a here to help company.